A few years ago, when Steam was old, like really old, meaning the retro days of Half-Life and Team Fortress, I had an account that I used to play Half-Life Deathmatch and generally play mods on. I had just about one friend on Steam at the time who I knew well. I never really interacted with people in online games. I got this ad from a guy called Toymaker26. I didn't recognize the name from any game I had played before, so I just declined. A week later on the same day, and around the same time, I get a notification that Toymaker26 has added me as a friend, which was creepy to say the least. I gave him the benefit of the doubt by accepting, thinking maybe he was just a real-life friend or something. As soon as I did though, a chat box pops up with him saying, "Hi, are you okay?" or something to that effect. But before I could say the generic, "I'm good, you?" he sent me this link that was clearly a virus link. Being the fearless bastard that I am, I clicked it just to see what would happen. Not really, I just clicked it because I didn't know any better. And boy, was that a mistake. The webpage opened up with all these really low quality pictures of people mutilated, and this sound playing in the back that was like a really distant laugh that was on a loop. I remember my heart literally drained from fear. I'm sure you know the feeling. I obviously clicked out of it, but my desktop background was a close-up of one of those fucked up images now. My disk drive kept opening and closing, and a message box popped up asking if I was okay, before my computer completely shut down. It never turned on again. A forever blue screen. We had to get a new PC, I remember. Apparently every file on the computer had been corrupted, even BIOS data, somehow. I still have no idea who Toymaker26 is to this day or why he did it, but I do know that those were some amazing hacking skills he's got. I was about 13 at the time and I was scared shitless. That experience made me so afraid of the hacking world of the internet. I've played WoW since release day, World of Warcraft if you don't know. And up until 2 years ago when my first daughter was born, I still did. I met my husband because of that game, and have had 2 babies. That game saved me from the cruel reality that I was forced to endure at the hands of my father. I was safe in this virtual world, away from his sick perversions and harsh words and actions. Or so I thought. I loved to raid a lot. I mean religiously. And as a 16-year-old girl playing a game dominated by men, I got a lot of attention. 90% of it being negative. This is one of those. Although I didn't think so at first. My guild and I were raiding, and our main tank was sick, so we were low a body. We found a new tank from a sister guild and began our raid night. I was a healer and was assigned to set new tank. He was super nice and very talkative. We talked a lot that night, even long after the raid had ended. We even went so far as to exchange MySpace info and email. His name in-game was Riser, so that's what I always called him. My name in-game was Chastity, so that's what he always called me. We never used our real names, and now I'm so very glad we didn't. We talked forever, and I was thrilled to discover he lived not 25 minutes away. Now seeing as I was a 16-year-old girl, I posted way too much information on MySpace. Way too much. Keep that in mind. Riser and I talked for weeks and weeks, and he was so nice and even helped me through a tough breakup. We talked on the phone until the wee hours of the morning, and he listened to me cry and offered kind advice to a very lonely, very stupid teenage girl. Keep in mind that he said he was 27 at the time. Looking back at this, I now realize how creepy it was becoming a lot earlier than I noticed it back then. He started flirting, and I must admit I flirted with him a bit too. Then he got sexual, and as a 16-year-old I lived for attention. And then his sexual emails got slightly violent. One incident in particular that I remember was an email that he sent me where he told me in graphic detail how he would like to rip me so hard that his man parts would rip through my cervix so he could feel the inside of my womb. Stupidly, even after reading that, I still talked to him. One day, after walking my dog through the park, I returned home to the phone ringing off the hook. No one was home, which was normal as both of my parents worked a lot, so I answered it. It was him. The first thing he said was,
"I saw you today. You're so cute."
He then proceeded to describe my dog, everything I was wearing, and even my makeup. I said, rather shakily, "Oh, why didn't you say hi? I didn't see you." He said,
"Oh, I didn't want to scare you. You'd know me if you saw me. I have a lot of scars, mostly on my neck."
Even back then, in all of my stupidity, I started to get scared. I said, "Yeah? From what?" His reply was way too happy when he said,
"From glass."
All I remember next was hearing him say,
"Can I come in?"
I slammed the phone down and grabbed two of the biggest knives in the kitchen. I grabbed my dog, who was a 200-pound St. Bernard, and hauled her into my room. As I was barricading my room, I heard someone pounding on the front door. The pounding continued for what seemed like hours, until it got dark. I jumped at every single noise I heard until my mom got home. I never answered any more of his phone calls or emails after that, though he sent me tons and emailed me several hundred times a day. I'm so glad I didn't open that door. Before reading this, I just want to clarify that this post is not an attack on the honor system of League of Legends. It's more of a personal statement. My client crashed midway through a game 2 days ago, and I was feeling pretty tired, so I just logged off and went to sleep. After relogging today, I noticed that I had received an honor from that game, the quote, honorable opponent one to be exact. I originally thought that someone DDoSed it, but the fact that I received honor from it was weird to me. I couldn't really remember what the game was about since it was so short, but luckily I had the recording of it on my LoL replay, despite it not showing up in my match history. I played Nocturne Jungle for that game like I usually do, more recently now because of the new skin, and I had a pretty standard build for about 15 minutes, which was a Madrid's Razor, some boots, a Vamp Scepter, and a few health pots up until the point that my client crashed. Upon rewatching it, I realized off the bat that something was off about that game. The enemy jungler never connected. In the loading screen, his or her name never appeared. Typical, I thought. The name is probably in another language. But after the screen loaded, I saw that he simply had no name. Stranger yet, he was also a Nocturne player. From the beginning, he still sat in his base. I might as well describe to you what happened during the game. We started out normally, and I jungled and ganked, but no one died for the first 15 minutes or so. Everyone was reasonably leveled and farmed, with every player being in the 6 to 10 level range, save for the enemy Nocturne. It was at 15 minutes and 13 seconds when I used my ultimate to get what seemed to be an assured kill on the enemy Soraka. This is when the game crashed. Or when I thought it crashed. My recorder thought otherwise. In the replay, the screen glitched for about 10 seconds after I ulted her, with everything freezing in place. When I was actually playing the game, it was during that glitch that my client froze and closed on me. But in the replay, after the glitch, it showed us all still playing. This really freaked me out, but I kept watching. Apparently, my quote, character secured the kill on Soraka, recalled and continued to jungle. That's when I read the eerie message. ... has reconnected. The no-name jungler on the other team got back into the game somehow and started to jungle. I felt uneasy watching him. The other lanes kept at each other, and it didn't take long for me to figure out the next oddity. The Soraka, quote, I had killed, never respawned. When I pressured tab to see the death timer, there was none. She just stayed dead. An ally has been slain. This time someone on my team died, the Ezreal, and it was the enemy Nocturne who killed him. He never respawned either. I froze in my chair, watching people die one by one, each death leaving a lasting impression on me. The Nocturne that I was, quote, supposedly playing did everything that I would have done, which weirded me out even further. It was almost like I was still playing in that match. After each player died, none would respawn. I was always on edge whenever I saw my character getting low on health, to the point that I was gripping my desk. I can't really explain why, but it's a nerve-wracking feeling knowing that if your character died, they wouldn't come back. I kept telling myself it was a glitch, but after what happened next, I found it hard to. There were only 3 people left. Me, the no-name Nocturne, and the enemy mid laner, Diana. At this point, my eyes were glued to the screen, and I couldn't help but watch as my character pursued her. This was the death that disturbed me the most. My character ulted towards her as I normally would have done, and met her at her wraith camp. Just as my character got there, I saw the enemy Nocturne standing still in the passage to the red buff. He just stood there and watched my Nocturne destroy the enemy Diana. After her death, everything was still. The minions didn't move, the projectiles were frozen in place, along with my character. Everything was frozen except the no-name jungler. He moved towards me and paused for a second. The timer in the recording was still going. Curious as to why he just stood there, I checked my settings on the recording. The chat box was unchecked. I remember my fingers shaking a bit as I clicked to check it. The no-name jungler had been typing throughout the entire match after the apparent crash. All he said, over and over, every single minute was, "Kill them all. Kill them all. Kill them all." Up until I had killed Diana. I felt my heart sink when I read those words decorated across my screen. What he said soon after, though, was what sent chills throughout my entire body. "Thank you for your assistance." And that's when the game ended. No Nexus was destroyed, no surrender vote was cast. It just ended. Horrified at what I just witnessed, I immediately took down the names of everyone in that game. After a bit of searching, I found that none of them played another game after that one. I'm still checking every few minutes, hoping that one of them will get in the game soon. I don't really know what happened to those people, and I don't think that I want to know. I've since deleted that recording from my computer. I don't want anything to do with that replay. The image from seeing that honorable opponent message on my screen from logging in is still burned into my head. Never have I felt so undeserving. So this happened a few months ago. I had just gotten Red Dead Redemption, which is an awesome game. And while I was playing online, I met this awesome guy named Rick. He's in like his 50s and is a retired firefighter. We played together for a while, and he was helping me level up so that people wouldn't target a low-level player who was also a girl. After a while, he introduces me to this guy named Black Wolf Angel or something like that. Black seemed cool at first. We would hang out on RDR, shooting lots of bandits and doing gang hideouts. After a while, we became somewhat good friends. He then started to lightly flirt with me every once in a while. I let it slide, being the kind person that I am. I made it my goal, though, to not get a so-called, quote, Xbox boyfriend, so I tended to avoid flirting on there. We would normally hang out in parties with Rick, but one time he invited me to a party and I was like, oh okay, he and Rick want to play. But instead I was dead wrong. He started to flirt super heavily with me. I acted like I had to go, so I just left. For weeks he would spam me with party invites and messages saying, "Hey sexy," and stuff like, "I'm so horny." It finally got to the point where I was so sick of him. So, when he invited me the last time, I answered, big mistake, and he started with the usual flirting and I just said, "Look, Black, I'm not interested in any kind of relationship right now, so please just lay off." He agreed and laid off for a few days. But then, he broke the silence by sending me a message saying, "I'm thinking of suicide because of you." I flipped my shit and started to curse him out and telling him to never contact me again. I told Rick all about it, and he told me that he stopped talking to him a few days before for the same reason. So, for a while everything was cool, but then I started to get phone calls and text messages saying the same shit he used to say. I answered one said call and told him to fuck off or I'll go to the police. Thankfully, he stopped after that. So Black from Xbox Live, let's never meet again, you creep. Edit. I never even gave him my number. Also, it turns out that he stalked my friend and questioned her for my number. He had threatened to hack her account. I had a total creep of a WoW guild leader. After a few months break, I renewed my WoW account and transferred servers to be with this girl I used to play with. We had always been two peas in a pod, and she convinced me to come join her guild. She was a very pretty young lady, so it was no surprise that she had a lot of guys in our guild wrapped around her finger, including the guild leader, who mistakenly thought that we were dating. When he realized it wasn't what he thought, the guild leader had a complete fucking raging meltdown. and he came to me for guidance. It turns out that he lived about 8 or so blocks from me. He discovered this because many of us had exchanged MySpace accounts beforehand, and naturally he wanted to get together and talk about it. I declined, obviously, since he was kind of a weird dude. Think Vork from the Guild. But soon it became clear that he was seeing me as more than just a guildmate, and that he was very eager to see me. One day, he messaged me online and said, "I think I was driving behind you today. Do you live on blank street?" The only place I had gone to that day was the college that I attended, which was not 2 minutes away from where I was living at the time. I drove a trashy convertible at the time, so I take it that's how he recognized me. And like I said, he did live about 8 blocks away from me. He started making jokes about climbing through my window and, quote, scaring me at night and stuff. He just loved joking about knowing where I lived. The types of trees in my yard, the cars in my driveway, the things he saw going on outside whenever he allegedly had driven by. This went on for quite a while despite me telling him to knock it off, and I didn't think it was appropriate to call the cops over someone knowing my mom planted roses outside that day or something. After a few months, I started playing on another server, and we lost connection. Thank God. I moved in with my dad around the age of 11, and to keep in contact with my brother, my dad helped me create an Xbox Live account. I made plenty of friends on Halo 3, Left 4 Dead 2, and Resident Evil 5, and had an amazing group of people that I'm still friends with to this day. The group I made were much older than me with a few exceptions. Some of their kids were also friends, a part of this group, and one of them is actually only 1 day older than me, so he and I became rather close. Overall, I made a lot of amazing memories with these people. There was one problem. About a year or two into being involved with these people, another person randomly rejoined the group. This person was friends with one of them before this, and the others were acquainted with this person as well, but they barely knew them. I've never been great at making friends as I'm awkward, and I say a lot of weird things that make people cringe in desperation. But I'm a pretty nice and friendly person, I think. I added this mysterious person because they also seemed friendly, but I was rather distant because this person also didn't have a mic. This person was also pretending to be a woman. When Halo Reach came out, every single one of us was on that game. We practically dominated SWAT, and this person would often join us. Communication was obviously limited because they lacked a mic, but it also made it easier for them to pretend to be female. Now, I do have a fairly deep voice myself, so a lot of people, even now, still think I'm a boy when playing online. So my instant thought was that maybe this person was just self-conscious over how they sound, or just couldn't afford a mic at the time. So, one morning, this person and I are both online. Everyone else was either still sleeping or was at work, as it was a weekday. This person and I began messaging each other back and forth, and it started off as a normal, pleasant conversation. Then though, it turned dark. Mind you, that this person was well aware that I was young and inexperienced in life. The person began sending me sexually explicit messages, asking me to show them my, quote, 13-year-old tits. At that moment, I blocked the person. My buddy, who introduced me to the group and is well into his 30s, gets online and I tell him everything that happened. It's obviously a little odd for such a young person to be friends with people several decades older than themselves. They all treated me like a little sister, and this became evident when I told my friend what had happened. He immediately gets defensive and starts messaging that mysterious man that he was no longer allowed to join our group as what he did was disgusting. As everyone in our group began signing on and joining the conversation, put the pieces together and realized this person was 1, a creep, 2, a liar, and 3, a man. This person had lied about not having a mic, and was caught with a mic at a few points during their time in our group. The person speaking was apparently male, and then lied about it, saying that the person speaking was, quote, her brother. There was plenty of other proof that people offered up, but that was one of the main ones that I remember. I've had plenty of creepy experiences online, but I think that one was the worst because that person was well aware of my age. Hey all, so this just happened this morning. It was super weird and unsettling, and I would love to hear people's opinions and what I should do if it happens again. I usually take the bus to my work, and the bus drops me off about 15 minutes walking distance. In that time I play Pokemon Go. I intended to walk to some of the Pokestops that are on my way to work. I got off the bus and a couple people get off as well, including this one older man, maybe about 65 years old. I started walking on autopilot on the sidewalk next to the road, but then I remembered the Pokestops and pivoted around and switched my direction by almost 90 degrees. This old guy who had been walking behind me going the same direction that I was notices I started going the other way. He immediately changes his direction too and starts following behind me again. I turned into the small strip mall that hosted the Pokestops I wanted to go to and see the first one. So I walk up to it and stop and chill for a few minutes collecting stuff from the stop and catching a couple Pokemon that had popped up. He passes me acting like he's just going about his business, but then stops in front of a store about 30 feet away from where I'm standing and starts looking into the windows. Keep in mind, all these stores are closed at this point, and it's 6 a.m. He has no phone in his hand, so I know he's not playing Pokemon Go, and he keeps glancing back at me as I keep my eye on him. He eventually walks off and disappears around the corner, as the whole strip mall was kind of curved, so it was easy for him to disappear from my vision. I walk in the direction he went to get to the next Pokestop, and I pass a wall on my right. As I pass the wall, he sees me and starts following behind me again. At this point I'm pretty weirded out, so I don't stop at any of the Pokestops and just keep walking and collecting the items as I pass, all while he's following behind me. I was worried I was just being overly paranoid and decided to test to see whether or not he was following me. I stopped at the last Pokestop at the strip mall and dilly-dally on my phone for a few, and he does the same thing again where he waits for me and starts following me again as I pass. I give him a very dirty look when I look behind me, and then speed walk to the office complex that was on the other side of the street from my job, as I didn't want him to know where I worked. I sat down at these secluded benches they have in front of them where a Pokestop was at. I never saw him again after that, but when I get off the bus tomorrow, I'm definitely going to be filming. If he does it again, I'll post it in the comments. Creepy guy following me to work? Let's not meet again. I recently built a new PC. It wasn't exactly powerful, as I wanted to spend as little money on it as possible. It was good enough to run Source Engine games like TF2, but nothing like Battlefield or Crysis. I was strictly looking for the cheapest way into PC gaming. Looking for a bit of nostalgia before I began playing some Team Fortress, I popped in my Halo CE disc into the tray and installed it. I have some fond memories playing with my group of friends and wanted to relive a bit of my past. I instantly started to have problems installing it. Aside from all of the minor compatibility issues this game has with Windows 7, I didn't have my CD key. Well, technically I still have it, but the game's CD key was tied to some other PC that was long gone. I was fed up with that, so I just booted up another game, slightly frustrated that I wasted about an hour of my life on that thing. It didn't take long though for me to start looking for workarounds so I could play. I eventually found a keygen, and the game started to install. I picked up the name that I used years ago, Dystionid, and hopped into the multiplayer lobby. I just picked a random game of Capture the Flag and joined to see if everything worked. It didn't, of course. A pop-up appeared and said that the server's client needed to be updated. The error messages got weirder and weirder. I should have taken a screenshot of some of them. Some of them were almost laughable. Random selections of words would replace the error messages. Completely random. It seemed no one else online had this problem. The ones that did were told to try updating their game. This information was no use to me though, because I updated it when I first booted it up. However, I still wanted to play. It didn't really matter if no one could join my gimpy out-of-date server, so I went and created an internet game. Before this, I started up Fraps to capture any weird error messages. I chose Capture the Flag on Blood Gulch, and the game started to load. Now some of you guys that have played Halo extensively know that there are certain points on any given map that you can glitch up to so people can't find you. These points require that you utilize glitches like pushing yourself through a wall with a vehicle, but there was also one I couldn't get to. It took such crucial mouse movements and careful precision to even make it to the first step. Since I had nothing better to do in an empty server, I reattempted the glitch. So I got myself into a ghost and made my way over to the middle-ish part of the map. I lined myself up against the pillar and began trying to nudge myself into the wall. If you hurl yourself towards it too slowly, you'll just be knocked off to its side. If you do it too quickly, you'll just plain knock yourself through the wall into the abyss. Getting in between there is what I'm trying to get at. A few tries later and I'm in. That was the easy part. The next few parts are hard to explain in text, I had to kinda shimmy across the wall until I start to get pushed off by something invisible. I now have to jump on that invisible thing without sliding off, and it's cake from there. A few tries later and I had it again. The vantage point this glitch had on the other side of the map made it rightfully so for it to be the hardest to achieve. My victory was cut short when my Spartan just drops dead though. What the crap? I guess I shouldn't be too surprised. Maybe I was out of bounds for too long? I couldn't think about this for too long until I started dying randomly even more. I started to get creeped out. The text just said, "Dystionid died." I've never seen a pop-up like this in Halo before. I went down into my base just to make sure nothing was hitting me. I sat there for what seemed like minutes, and I was observing everything. I leaned forward so my face was practically touching the monitor. Then my screen went black for a second. I didn't have any time to notice what was going on when I heard this horrible screeching noise. I reacted by knocking my headphones onto the keyboard, and everything was dark. Dark to the point where I could barely make out anything. Then a player joined. The player who had just joined my seemingly impossible to join server was named Juliet. I was thinking this must have been the person who was making me drop dead. It also must have been her who made that horrible sound. It seemed impossible for her to control my Spartan's life, or even emit noises that aren't in the game. I just wanted to see if I could go shoot at her, so I took off to the Blue's base. I was thinking maybe this was all a coincidence and a couple other players will join, and this is just a normal game of capture the flag. The outward appearance of the Blue base seemed normal, but inside was something disturbing. On the left wall in the back, there were words which I made out to be, "Find me." I was just about to exit right out of the game, but I was stopped in my tracks when a text appeared on my screen. I nearly forgot you could chat in the game. Juliet just sent a smiley face. I said, "Who are you?" Juliet replied by saying, "Let's play hide and seek." After I dropped dead once again, I quit and shut down my server. I didn't want to hear whatever she had to say next, and frankly I was kinda creeped out by the whole situation. I honestly don't know if this is a normal occurrence. Maybe the community has been overrun with hackers and this happens all the time. So, the gist of my plan is to play hide and seek with her and to see where it takes me. I honestly don't know how I didn't make the connection between quote "find me" and her saying "let's play hide and seek." But here's the problem. This was probably just some one-time thing. Random occurrence. Although I'm giving myself the benefit of the doubt, I don't think she'll ever come back. I'm still going to play though. Same setup and everything. It probably gives me the best chance of summoning Juliet again. And with all of that out of the way, I don't think I have much else to say. Nothing much has happened since I quit out of the game. I mentioned that I had something creepy happen on my game during the trip. They seemed to find this hilarious and was their main source of ridiculing me, saying things like, "Oh, should we pack it up early? I don't want to keep you from performing an exorcism on your game disc." I'm gonna play again as soon as possible, so expect another update tomorrow. Update. I didn't sleep last night. I was too excited to play. No, excited wasn't the word. I was anxious to play. I wanted to get this out of the way so I could move on with my life. All I needed to do was just see if she would join again and play hide and seek. So why not pull the band-aid and play so I can rest easy tomorrow? Well, I did just that. I started up Halo and created a LAN server instead of an internet server. This time I'd know if some weird crap was really going on. I hit start server and the map started to load up. Well, the first thing I noticed was that I could actually see again. Everything looked normal enough. This wasn't nearly as scary as I remembered it being. I decided to give myself a 10-minute time limit to wait before I tried switching to an internet game or just calling it a night. All I could do was fill the time by aimlessly wandering around Blood Gulch. This obviously got boring after 3 to 4 minutes, so I started calling out to her. "Hey Juliet, getting tired here. What am I supposed to do?" That seemed to do it. Juliet joined. A strange mixture of fear and confusion came over me because I thought I had everything figured out. I thought she was just a random player who was screwing with me. But now, it looks like if she was waiting for me. And on top of that, I was playing on a LAN game. I didn't believe what I was seeing. Am I now supposed to believe that she's some sort of magical technological ghost that transcends space and time? I don't know what to believe anymore. She says, "Do you want to play now?" I respond, "Yeah, My game froze and everything went dark again, but this time there was a noise. It was just looping over and over again. I started to look around for her, barely able to keep my mouse under control because I was shaking. I felt sick to my stomach. I didn't really want to do this. I don't know why I said yes to her, but I feel like I'd be letting you guys down if I didn't see this through. Juliet said, "Count to 10. So I counted to 10. I was just going to search from the back of the map to the front. That seemed like the most efficient way to go about this. I eventually found her crouched in a corner looking at me. You found me. I didn't know whether or not she was just going to immediately leave after I found her, so I asked her, "Who exactly are you?" "That's not the question you should be asking," she said. "Then what should it be?" I replied. "You should be looking for a place to hide." And with that, she quit out of the server. I tried for an hour after this, attempting to get her back. I even made a server named, quote, "Juliet, please join." None of that worked. She's gone. After all, she got what she wanted, a simple game of hide and seek.